Wonderful. We are going to begin and welcome again to the Love Resists webinar, sharing and reflecting on the issues of what it means to be being jailed for being poor, how the money bail system criminalizes poverty in the United States. My name is Reverend Jason Leiden. I am a Unitarian Universalist community minister based in Chicago, Chicago, Illinois. I just recently moved from Massachusetts. That happens a lot. And I am so glad to be with you and thankful to Megan and everybody at Siding with Love and Love Resists for making this possible, and incredibly thankful to all of our amazing panelists that you will hear from shortly. Before we dig into all of this, I wanted to light a candle for us. There's a bit of a chalice. For those who are new to the Unitarian Universalism, the chalice is a symbol of our faith, a flame that we burn in order to remember those who have lived and fought and struggled for justice long before us, and whose memory we continue the work in the name of. And the candle that we have is actually from Friends in New Orleans, and it is a candle that you can use to seek protection from law and police. So I thought that would be appropriate for us as we gather today. And so I light this candle as we begin, as we learn to love, to act, to do justice in all of the work that we do. And so I thank you all for being part of this space. Briefly, I wanted to share with you some of the goals of this webinar that, and then Megan, if you want to share, excellent, that we are working to really build people power, right? And focus on local and national campaigns to end money bail. That the bail system is designed to destroy people's lives, to keep poor people locked up, and to make it so that people cannot be in their communities, cannot defend themselves, cannot have the resources they need in order to challenge the criminal cases that they are facing. So we are here to build power to ensure that we can end a system that has been designed to cause so much harm. We're also here to encourage participation in Blue, Black Lives Unitarian Universalism's Bailout Fund Network to ensure that people are putting money where they can, are able to remember that Unitarian Universalism has a responsibility, and people of faith within Unitarian Universalism have a responsibility to be getting involved in this work, supporting the leadership of Black people who are most directly affected by the violence that is the bail system. We also want to connect people to local and national work, making sure that we recognize that we're not doing this alone. We're not new to this, right? Or this work isn't new. We might be new to it, but this work isn't new, and we have the opportunity to plug in to amazing things that are happening. And for me, one of the most important things that I hope that as Unitarian Universalists, when we're engaging in this work, is that we understand the theological grounding of why bailout work is political action that flows from our faith, our understanding of universalism. And so with that, one of the things I want to highlight there is a reminder that while Unitarian Universalists are disproportionately white, disproportionately middle class and wealthy, and are most often not the targets of our criminal legal system in the United States, our legacy is actually one in which one of our key founders, John Murray, founder of Universalism in the United States, fled really impoverishment in Britain when he had gotten himself out of prison because somebody else paid money for him to get free. And he was able to come, unfortunately, colonization and white supremacy brought him to what is now the United States. And his theology, though, this idea that we can create a world where people can live together, worship together, have community together, where we aren't centering on punishment. An experience he already knew so much about, having been locked up simply because he couldn't pay the fees and taxes that he was forced to pay in his home. And so that's part of our history and legacy. And we have a theology that reminds us that punishment does not bring us salvation. And so my hope is that we can build from there, get more connected to the work of people on the ground who are getting communities free and getting us to where we need to be. So thank you all so much for being with us today as we move forward through this webinar. And so today we'll be hearing from Atara from the Massachusetts Bail Fund, as well as the National, oh, things are moving on my screen, excuse me, as well as the National Bail Fund Network. We'll be hearing from Devereaux and Irene from the Chicago Community Bond Fund, Lola Rainey from the Tucson Second Chance Community Bail Fund, and we'll close out with Paige Ingram from the Black Lives for Unitarian Universalism. And so thank you so much for being here to listen, to learn, and to commit to act. And we will start with Atara, please.
Hi, so I'm just going to give a short overview of what bail is so we all know what we're talking about. And bail, it's an amount of money that a court requires from a person who's being prosecuted. If they pay that money, then they can fight their case from home and from a place of freedom. If they don't pay that money, they stay in jail for the duration of their case. When the case closes, regardless of the case outcome, bail is returned. So it's just an amount of money that the court holds on to for the duration of your case. And if you can't pay it, you spend that time in jail. There are a number of state-specific ways that money can be paid. Sometimes it's required to be paid in full in cash, sometimes in a kind of bond, sometimes partially in cash, sometimes in a bond, but all states have this situation. In most states, it's important to know, bail can only be used in order to ensure someone comes to court. So the purpose of bail, it's always really important to remember, is in order to make sure someone comes to court. It's often conflated with other kind of personality or crime or charge-specific situations, but most of the time it can only be used in order to ensure someone comes to court. Some, but not all states have a bail bond industry. Massachusetts, where I'm from, doesn't have one. But in those situations, it's important to remember that the bail bond industry is a really important and has a really strong lobby and will oftentimes oppose any kind of reform or change that we're talking about. A bail bond company, different from a bail fund, is a commercial industry that charges money to assist in the payment of bail for your loved one, and that money doesn't get returned, and they're often predatory. When we're also talking about bail, it's important to understand the context in which bail is assessed. We don't actually statistically have a failure to appear problem, right? So bail is only in order to ensure someone comes to court. That's not actually a problem nationwide or even statewide. About 82% of people come to court when they're supposed to. That's not a situation that we would call a problem in any other industry, but in this one we call it a problem. Excuse me. So often almost exclusively, bail is just used in order to force pleas for people. So the end result of people being locked up while they're awaiting trial are not just the health and safety and security of people, but they also have far worse outcomes. Also, it's important to understand the context of white supremacy in which this exists. Black and brown people get higher bails, both nationally, and you'll see the same statistics in different states, and also worst case outcomes come with someone being held in jail pre-trial. That's just a real short overview of what bail is, so that we all sort of understand what we're talking about when we talk about bail, or even bail reform and bail abolition. Jason, do you want me to keep going and talk about Massachusetts, or?
That'd be great. A little bit about Massachusetts would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So I run the Massachusetts Bail Fund. It's a all-volunteer community bail fund that's been around since 2013. We post bail in almost all of Massachusetts. By the end of the year, we'll be posting bail statewide. And we use volunteers in the community to post bail in courts and jails for people who can't afford bail. We have a limit of $500 or less. And that actually catches a lot of folks. Massachusetts has pretty low bails because we don't have a commercial bond industry. And so people are being held for $25, $50, $100. And one of the ways in which Unitarian Universalist communities have come and been involved in Massachusetts is there's a congregation in Duxbury that posts all of our bails in a particular county in Massachusetts. So we use all volunteers to go to different jails to get people free using donated money. And it's just a cornerstone of what we do. It's not the entirety of what we do. Something that we think about when we talk about the National Bail Fund arena, there are 40 plus bail funds nationwide, is that bailouts and bailing people is really important harm reduction work, but it's really just the cornerstone of the work that we're doing. Bail funds and community bail actions can act as canaries in the coal mine of understanding what is actually happening in our criminal punishment system, our criminal legal system, and lift up what's happening on a larger scale. So legislative advocacy, community advocacy, and starting more programs in our communities to lift up to more people the injustices and the abominations that we're seeing in court all the time. We see, you know, the few people that do the bailouts in Massachusetts see what's happening all the time, and then sort of working to open up the courthouses and the jails so that everybody can see what's happening and use that information to and make actual real change. The other thing about our bail fund and the National Bail Fund Network is that the goal isn't to change this system. It's not to make bail work better or work nicer. It's to get rid of it entirely, understanding that we don't have a failure to appear problem. So people come to court when they're supposed to, and even when they don't, the answer to that isn't incarcerating them, right? And so moving from that space of thinking that we need to work within this bail system and understanding we could actually just get rid of it and we'd be fine in that arena and move on to something better and actually helping our communities and helping people maintain freedom and be free. So our bail fund works with other bail funds around the country to lift up that message and started a couple of programs in Massachusetts, and a number of people are doing this nationwide, of court watch programs to lend some measure of accountability to the promises and the function of district attorneys and judges who pay a lot of lip service to bail reform because that's a national issue, but actually see what's really happening in courts. And then partnering with whoever in our community is doing this work or wants to learn about this work. So,
thank you so much.
Sure.
Sorry, the screen is moving me. Next up, we will hear from Devereaux from the Chicago Community Bond Fund and Irene as well.
Hi, everyone.
How you guys doing? Hi, my name is Devereaux Wolf, and I'm an advocate organizer with Chicago Community Bond Fund.
And I'm a staff member at CCBS.
I actually got involved with Chicago Community Bond Fund when they helped me be released from Cook County Jail in June 13, 2016. And I've actually been doing work with them ever since. So today, we're going to talk to you guys about money bond and pretrial incarceration. How does it affect people's lives? And money bond is punishing people because they're poor. More than 50% of Cook County jails have people in there because they can't afford their bond. And pretty much, pretrial incarceration has a negative impact on people's lives, such as people losing their jobs, losing housing, losing custody of their children, also having no access to education. And also another thing I wanted to add on to is the use of electronic monitoring, which we call house arrest. It's still another form of incarceration. You just detained in your home, and you still don't have no access to better your situation. And another thing, people are forced to do plea deals, obviously because they don't have a lawyer or they've been incarcerated so long that they decide to make a decision that they need to be released, so they're willing to take a plea deal. So another thing what I like about being a part of Chicago Community Bond Fund, our goal is to abolish and end money bail and pretrial incarceration. So one thing I know that we do, so we have the revolving fund. We actually bond the people out, and hopefully that they, while they're out in freedom, that they stand afloat and being successful, that we can take that money and use it to bond out the next person that's struggling. We do fundraisers as well to raise the money, but sometimes we don't all the time. So we do a lot of advocacy work so we could change the policy and end money bond.
Yeah, as Deborah mentioned, we recognize that we can't raise all of the money that we need to bond everybody out who's at Cook County Jail. We've been operating, we posted our first official bond at CCBF in 2015. And, since then we've posted close to $800,000 in bond, and we've been able to free 146 people. But that's only a small portion of the people who are incarcerated at Cook County Jail. Right now, there's close to 6,000 people who are there. And as Deborah said, most of them are incarcerated simply because they can't afford their bonds. So a large part of our work is working with the people that we're bonding out to, provide the supportive services that they need and connect them with volunteers to ensure that, they get the best outcome possible in their case. But we also want to make sure that we're ending the use of money bonds. So we, through a number of different strategies, right, are engaging in work to get rid of the use of money bonds, including like litigation that's pending here where CCBF helps to refer the plaintiffs. Also, through our work with the Coalition to End Money Bond, we worked to write and introduce a piece of legislation that would get rid of the use of money bond altogether in the state. And we're also, we were successful in pressuring the Chief Justice in Cook County to issue an order, General Order 188A, which pretty much is telling bond court judges in Cook County that they shouldn't be setting bond amounts higher than what people can afford. Through our work with the coalition, we had, over 100 volunteers go to bond court to monitor and see how this was being implemented. And, we found out that, although on paper, the order is really good, it's not being fully implemented in bond court. So there's still a number of judges who are setting bond amounts higher than what people can afford. And there's still over 50% of people incarcerated at Cook County Jail only because they can't afford to pay their bonds. So right now, we recently got some data from the Office of the Chief Justice that says that from January to March, in all money bonds that were set, 54% of people weren't able to pay them. And through other data sources, we know that bond court judges in over 500 cases send bond amounts higher than what people can afford. So, we're still going to be engaging in that advocacy work to make sure that we get rid of the system altogether, and working with people like Devereaux and some of our members to make sure that we're, putting out there the stories and the impact of how this is impacting not just the people who are incarcerated, but also, their family and their community members.
Yeah, so we're happy that this is not being overlooked anymore, and we hope that these lawsuits are successful and we can end money bond pretrial incarceration.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's do that. Thank you so much. Appreciate you sharing. Next up, we have Lola Rainey from the Tucson Second Chance Community Bail Fund. We can't hear you, Lola, if you're speaking. I see that you're unmuted yourself. Oh. Ooh, now we hear you a lot of you echoing. If you can mute one of the things that you're using.
Now I turned off the. Wow.
I feel like we can have a dance party now.
Hello? Wow. Hello?
Hi, you're still. Is there a way to mute one of your things and try talking?
No, it's not. Okay, let me turn on the computer. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, Lola, if you can mute the computer, that will do it.
Okay, how about that? Wow, I turned it on. Excellent. Let me see.
Thanks everyone for bearing with us as we deal with some technology. Lola, would you maybe be willing to try calling in one more time? I apologize. Sorry for the difficulty.
Okay, you want me to call in one more time?
Yeah, and just from the phone, not from any computer.
Okay, all right.
Thank you so much. Well, while we are waiting for Lola to return, thank you so much. I'm wondering, maybe Deborah, if you'd be willing or interested in sharing any more. We appreciate not to put you on the spot, but I know you said this was your first. If you'd be willing to share more about your experience or how you're getting involved in organizing. Y'all are on mute though. No.
You can hear me?
Yeah, hear you great.
Okay, pretty much, like I have to explain my experience of being on electronic monitoring as well. Like, that was not a good experience. I don't know if the situation with Sheriff Dark was stopping a lot of people from being released on electronic monitoring. He was saying like that was like a pat on the back, but he don't understand because he never actually been on house arrest himself. So I can acknowledge you that being on house arrest, it felt like I was still in jail. I couldn't even step off the porch without them calling me saying, if I move 100 feet away from my box, they're coming to get me and I'm being back incarcerated. Another thing is, while I was in Cook County Jail, I had a few health situations, drinking Kool-Aid in there where one of my kidneys almost went out bad. Place is condemned. It's just no place for nobody to be, especially innocent, to prove guilty. My thing with that is I'm glad I can be the one that acknowledge people that it's people like me out here that's suffering and have been affected from it, money bond and pretrial incarceration. Because at the moment, if Chicago Community Bond Fund didn't come in play for me, I would still be incarcerated, and because my family didn't have the money to bond me out because my uncle had recently passed. So mainly the majority of the funds had to go to his funeral, or I would have missed my mom's graduation. It was a few things. I almost lost my apartment. It was just so much, and it was effective on me. So pretrial incarceration is definitely something that people need to acknowledge, that it's people that's out here that's not doing wrong things, but they're suffering from the system.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thanks for being willing to share. Lola, are you back with us?
I am not seeing her.
Okay. Hopefully Lola will come back. In the meantime, Paige from Black Lives Unitarian Universalism, would you be willing to step in, my friend?
Yeah, that's not a problem. Hey everyone, my name is Paige. I'm a community organizer with Black Lives of UU. Actually, I am just coming back from a convening hosted by Southerners on New Ground, who's an organization that does phenomenal work around ending money bail. And tomorrow I'll be heading to the Movement for Black Lives and Law for Black Lives bail reform convening as well. So there's a lot of movement going on nationally around ending money bail. And we're just really excited to be bringing that to the Unitarian Universalism space. So I'll be filling in for Leslie Mack, who is the lead on all the work we've been doing for Public Witness, and she apologizes for her absence, but I'm happy to be here. Just to give y'all some background, Blue has taken on the work of organizing Public Witness because we're trying to reposition public witness in a way that leaves a lasting gift and impression and support to the communities that we're gathering in. We recognize that the role of public witness is to make sure that we are directly addressing the material needs of those affected by injustice in these communities. And so we also are.
These are all things that impact who's being incarcerated, who's being profiled. And so if we're going to start talking about, dismantling the criminal justice system, we have to create a more just society generally in your community. So we have to identify, what are your values? What matters to us? What are we willing to fight for? And when we know what our values are, then we can we begin to think about, so how does what we have look different than what we want? And then how can we begin the steps of moving towards our goals of remaking our community? And by remaking our community, we invariably change the criminal justice system.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Amen, as we many say. Are there other questions that came up? One, is there any people lobbying that folks know of, just kind of on the anxiety side of things? Any people who are doing lobbying to shut down these volunteer programs? Are there people trying to stop these programs from existing, whether they're doing so on a legislative level, or some ways trying to affect courts? There was a question about, are there people fighting back against kind of the bail funds that exist?
No, you go, Lola.
I was just going to say that I mentioned the Supreme Court. Our Supreme Court is one voice that has some control over what judges do, but they're at only recommending action. Because in addition to the courts, you have the legislature, and the legislature has a totally different view of what they want. So I think the real struggle right now is not with our courts, who I think sort of get it, and over time they will change, but there's going to be the pressure from the legislature, which has a much more conservative, pro-law enforcement point of view. And so that's the battle, and you can't fight them without getting more people involved in the process of having the conversation. That's my comment. Thank you.
The bail bonds industry has spent like hundreds of thousands of dollars opposing a lot of this stuff. If you Google and Facebook recently stopped hosting bail bonds ads, and that was opposed wholeheartedly by the bail bonds industry. And then a few days later, the Mass Bail Fund got an email from a bail bonds PR company with advice on and a video that we could watch on how to go around that, which is pretty hilarious. But they also post a lot of articles, especially in friendly newspapers or news organizations, about the dangers of ending cash bail. And so you'll see a lot of scaremongering that way. You also will, and I know bail funds all sort of think about this, is when something bad does happen, right? Like when someone that we post bail for does something that's really scary, and we post bail, all of us, thousands of people every year, and it will happen. There was a situation in New York where that just happened, and a newspaper got a hold of it and sort of ran with that. And the more educated and understanding of a community you have, the less likely they are to come down on this idea that the answer for harm like that is to end a bail fund.
Right.
That's where sort of the community accountability and community connections come in. But the only place that has a lot of money is the bail bonds industry.
Thank you. A couple of specific questions around General Assembly for you, Paige. There's questions around if you could share more about the purses that you're asking in terms of what it means to be gently used, and then also should there be zippers and clasps so that they can be, in terms of safety, like things that people might need. So there's that question. And then also in terms of white folks, what are the best ways that you would imagine white folks would be best allies into the public witness projects that are coming up.
Yeah, okay, cool. So in terms of the purses, I think that, well, there's going to be a lot of stuff going into them, mostly like toiletries, gift cards, sanitary products, so on. So I think preferably something that has that it can close in some sort of way. But outside of that, there aren't really, I just say use your best discretion and bring it. And even if we can't use it in this context, we can also donate it to the closet at Uzazi Village for women to be able to use as they want. And then in terms of white folks getting involved, there's a few things. So I would say definitely attend the Anatomy of a Bailout panel discussion. I should also mention that we're going to be streaming this live. So the idea is that we really want to plug in UUs, whether they're in General Assembly or not, to get involved and get engaged with a long-term plan around doing work with End Money Bail. We want to get congregations understanding what exactly happens in terms of these bailouts, what happens after we bail someone out, and how can they best support Black and Brown and Indigenous folks who are doing the work. So that's definitely something. I would also say, yes, come and hang out and help build these care packages. 1,000 care packages is a lot. And although we have, quite a few days to do it, it's a lot of work. So I think that is definitely a way to plug in. Again, if you can't come to GA, please buy some stuff from the wish list and contribute in that way. So the only thing that's exclusively for people of color and Indigenous folks is the work at Uzazi Village, that hands-on project where we're going to be in the dirt, doing some work in their community garden, and doing some work inside in the facilities. So, but yes, there are many ways to get involved, and I just also want to emphasize that we will be having that that toolkit available as a way to get congregations going and doing this work. So we don't want to just go to Kansas City and have a good time and leave. We're really trying to get folks to commit to something longer term, individually and collectively as congregations. And this is the way as allies to Black folks, Black and Brown Indigenous folks, to do this work. So I hope that answered your question. And if it didn't, let me know.
Thank you so much. That was so great. Well, I really want to thank all of you for participating. I want to thank everybody who called in to listen and learn this evening. I want to thank Paige and Lola and Devereaux and Irene and Atara for sharing your brilliance and wisdom, and really thank also Megan Selby for coordinating this and doing so much work. Really appreciate all of you. And I want to close us out with a short piece from Mark Vogt, who is a Unitarian Universalist prisoner currently incarcerated, who has a piece in Testimony, which is a great book of stories of people saying why Unitarian Universalism has been transformative for them, and a good number of them are from prisoner members who are part of the Church of the Larger Fellowship. So as we go, for those of us who are Unitarian Universalists, as we go out into the world, please hold on to his words where he says, Unitarian Universalism has taught me that I am not alone in my struggle to become a better person, and that there will be others there always with me to support me when I fall short. I do not have to be perfect, beautiful, smart. I only have to be myself. I do not have to be wealthy or popular to make a difference in the world. I only need to give what I can and to love my neighbor as I wish to be loved. And so as we move forward in our efforts towards abolition, to ending the cash bail system, to stopping the prison industrial complex from maintaining its colonial and anti-Black violence, we do so with our hearts full of love, with our hearts full of compassion for the possibility of what we can do next. And we burn with the fire of love to bring justice forward. So thank you all, and I blow out our candle. That is again, the protection from the law and police candle. And as I do, we have a couple of resources that we're sharing on the webinar as we're heading out that you can see, and we will send around the webinar PowerPoint for folks who attended. So thank you so much for being in. For those who you all got emails about getting on the call, you will also get these lists of resources and the PowerPoint sent to you. And so thank you all so much for being with us this evening, and have a blessed rest of your night.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.